Updating tuples in Python when tuples are immutable. So here we have a tuple with the following numbers. This tuple is unchangeable. It's stored in this variable called scores, but we cannot add, append, or remove items from it. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do those operations when you really need to change your tuple. So what you do is you convert the tuple to a list, change the value by the index, and then convert back to a tuple. And remember, the indexing starts at 0 for the lists. So here, if we look at this tuple, we are going to convert it into a list in this line. So this code over here, list, is the data type. This is the constructor of a list, and we are passing it a tuple. So a list can accept a tuple as an input into it. So when it creates the list, we can accept a tuple in its constructor. Then using the list item, notice here that's the list variable now. So we're going to access the first item. We're going to change it to 65. So that will be 0 and 1. So we're going to change that to 65, and then we're going to convert it into a tuple using the tuple variable data type name. So here we're going to use tuple, and we're going to pass it into its constructor. The list accepts lists as a valid input, and then we're going to print. So here the 60 will change into 65. If we run this, and you can see the first number is 50, then we have 65, and then we have 70. So here we want to add Wednesday to this tuple. So to do this, you follow the same similar steps. So tuples, you don't have an append method. So you convert it into a list, add a value to it, and then convert it back into a tuple. So here you can see we've got days and the tuple variable name. It's got 2 items. We're going to convert it into a list. We're going to store that list in a new variable. Then we're going to use the append method, add Wednesday into the list, and then we're going to change the original variable. So this is creating a new tuple, and we're going to replace whatever content it had before. So tuple again takes in its constructor a list, which is this one over here, which now has Wednesday added on. So now if we print this, you can see that we have Wednesday in the list, whereas previously we just had Monday, Tuesday. So in similar fashion, you can actually remove an item. So we have the append method, but you can also use the remove method to remove a color. So here we've got red, blue, green, and we want to remove blue. So you use the remove method, again converting it into a list, and then converting it back into a tuple. So if I run this over here, you can see we're just left with red and green. And you can delete your tuple completely. Well, actually, it's not completely deleting the tuple. Instead, it's deleting the variable name, which in turn will eventually get rid of the data that sits behind this, as long as there are no more references to that data. So by using the del keyword over here, you can delete the variable, and then that variable will be inaccessible. So it cannot get to this data, and eventually this data will be got rid of. So if I run this over here and then try and print the variable, it says the variable is not defined because it's been deleted with the del keyword. Remember, it's not deleting the tuple, it's just deleting the variable name. So you use the del keyword to delete the variable. It deletes the variable only, not the contents. Eventually, the content will be deleted or garbage collected by Python, and then accessing it after the delete causes an error, which you can see it says temp data variable is not defined. Python tuple unpacking for beginners. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to unpack a tuple and what does it actually mean. So tuple unpacking is you have one variable that holds the tuple and you want to assign it to multiple variables. So extract out individual values and put them in individual variables. Order does matter when you are doing this, when you're unpacking tuples, which I will show you. Values are assigned left to right. So example here, which is you've got a tuple that holds value 1 and 2. So 1 over here would get allocated to A, 2 would get allocated to B. So let's look at that in practice. So here you have a tuple that refers to a point. So this is the variable name point. And that's what a tuple is. Tuple is indicated by these round brackets and our comma separated list of items. So here we are unpacking. So we are declaring 2 variables, X and Y, and then we are assigning those variables to be equal to the point, which is a tuple. So this is a tuple. So when I run this code over here, you can see exactly what's happened. X value has become 3 over here. Y value over here has become 7 as shown here. So we printed Y and X. So that in summary is how you unpack a tuple. Values get assigned from left to right. So the first value goes into X, second value goes into Y. Over here, order does matter. and the values are assigned left to right. Important thing is number of variables must match. So you must have same number of values and variables required. If you don't, then you will get a mismatch error and your code won't work. So for example, if you have 2 values and you have 3 variables. So let's take a look at that in practice. So here we have 2 values and we have 3 variables, A, B, C. Try and run this code. You see that we've got an error. The error says not enough values to unpack. Expected 3, got 2. So we have 2 values here, but we have 1, 2, and 3 variables. So that won't work. Same is true the other way. If you have 3 variables over here, but only the same is true when you have 3 values over here, but only 2 variables, your code won't work. So if I run this, you can see that we've got too many values to unpack, but we have only 2 variables here, but 3 values over here. So that won't work. So in that situation, what you can use is an asterisk. So here you can still have 2 variables, A and B, but put an asterisk before the B. And if I run this code here, what you can see is what's happened is assign the first value 10 to variable A, and the rest of the values, which are 20, 30, are assigned to variable B. So when we print variable B, it is a list. So you use an asterisk to catch extra values, just as we did here. So we had extra values here, 20 and 30. Those were caught by B because we put an asterisk to catch the remaining values. And the result is always a list. So here you can see this is a list. So essentially you end up with that situation. So here's another example. We have scores. We want to capture just the first score, and the others we just want in that variable. So if I run this over here, you can see 85 gets put into the variable code first, and the rest of them get transferred to this variable code others, which is over here. So 90, 88, and 92 get transferred into this other variable, and output of that is a list. List is indicated by these square brackets. So this is always a list. Let's take a look at tuple unpacking, ignoring values you don't need. So here, to unpack a tuple, what you do is you add the underscores instead of the variable's names that you want. But one thing that you need to understand is the underscore is actually a variable. Underscore is a valid variable name. So what the underscores are used for are variable names. So here in Python, it is common to see it to be used for unused values. It is a common Python convention. And in this instance, what we're doing is when we unpack the red, green, blue variables here for the representation of RGB, we want to only keep in the red values and ignore these two. So if I run this over here, you can see that the red one is printed over here, 255, and the underscore variable is the one to ignore, although you can still print it. So this is important. You can still print the underscore variable because that's a valid variable name. And all it's happening here is it's just overwriting. First it assigns it equal to 100, the underscore variable, then it assigns it equal to 50. That's why when you print it, the last value is kept 50. So you can do interesting things, which is you can use the asterisk character over here before the variable name. The variable name in this instance is underscore, and it will basically transfer these two values into that underscore variable and only keep the red value. So if I run this over here, you can see the red value is kept, but the other two values over here, 150, are transferred into the underscore. So the underscore is essentially a throwaway variable name. In Python, remember, it's a common Python convention. If you see an underscore, then see that somebody actually is just throwing away the value of that variable. It's not needed. That's all you need to think about this. This is like, rather than saying unused variable 1, so for example, I could have done it like this. So I could just rename this. So I could call it unused var 1, and then I can replace the second one, unused var 2, but this clutters your code. So rather than doing it like this, what you can do is just replace it with underscore, adapt to the Python convention that just says basically ignore the underscores. I know they are throwaway values. We don't need to bother about the value of 100 or 50. So just use them when you don't want to save the value and you don't care about it. And use the asterisk to throw away multiple values when you're unpacking a tuple. Looping through tuples in Python. So here I have a tuple. You can see it's a tuple by these round brackets. And then you have comma separated values over here. The first and the easiest loop that you can use is the for loop. Use the for keyword. Then you have a temporary variable here. And then the variable here, colors, refers to the colors variable over here. Using the temporary variable, you can print the individual entries. So for example, the very first time it loops, red will be the first entry allocated to this variable, and then you can print it over here. Then in the next round, so after it loops back, it will go to green, and green will be the value over here. And in this fashion, all the values will be printed because the for loop over here can iterate through a collection. And in this case, the collection is actually a tuple. The next loop we have is the for in. So what it will do is it's still a for in loop. So for each item, but this time it's going to use the range object. What the range object does is it will get the length of number of items, so in this case 3, and it will create an integer value each time the loop goes through, and then it will print the integer index and the value of that particular item in the tuple. So here, if we do that, you can see the index 0, 1, and 2. All indexes start at 0, so this is 0 index, this is 1, and this is 2, and then you get the output like this. So if you want to control things by a number, you can use this style of loop rather than this style of loop over here. The last one is using the while loop. So here you can use an integer at the beginning, and then as long as that integer is less than the length of the colors over here, so it starts off at index 0 and then goes to 0, 1, you can then decide to increment the value of it. Just to explain what the range object is, so here you can see it in practice. The range object is if you do range 3, then it will create values from 0, 1, 2. So that's what the range object is. A range actually is a class object, and it has start, stop, and step. If you supply it one value, then that's where it's going to stop, but it just stops one value before that because its index is at 0. So in essence, behind the scenes, this is the values that the range object holds. Start is 0, stop is at 3, and step is at 1. So it will increase the value of the I every time by 1, and then it keeps track of the current position using current underscore position. You can actually see the individual values from here. So if I put that in a variable, you can see that from the range object, you can actually get the start, you can get the stop, and you can get the step. So these values are shown printed over here. How to join tuples in Python. So here we have one tuple with the following numbers and then another tuple. We want to join them together, concatenate them essentially. So what you can use is you can use the plus operator. By using the plus operator, you put the first variable that you want to join on the left hand side and the second on the other side. And then once you do that, so if I run this code here to create two tuples and then click on here, and now you can see originally we had these items 1, 2, 3. So these have appeared here first in the list, and then we've got these two items next as shown here. This is because we added this on the right hand side. So you can use the plus to join tuples together like shown here. Order does matter, so left comes first as you saw, left side comes first, so you've got 1, 2, 3 values coming before the values 4 and 5. The other thing to notice, new variable holds the result. Tuples are immutable. Joining does not edit the existing tuples. So here it didn't edit the numbers A variable, numbers B variable. Instead, we ended up getting a new variable combined. So by using this operation, it would create a new tuple rather than amend the existing one. This is because tuples cannot be mutated. The next thing you can do is repeat a tuple using an asterisk. So by using an asterisk, you can repeat a tuple multiple times. So as shown here, so I've got a tuple with A and B as the values. So that's a pattern that I want to repeat. So what I can do is do an asterisk or multiplication symbol and times it by 3. So this will repeat the pattern 3 times. So the number here controls the number of repetitions. This is really useful when you are trying to create a pattern or placeholder. So in this instance, if I run this, you can see that this pattern A and B is repeated 1, 2, and 3. So it's repeated 3 times. One thing to note with tuples is you cannot join a tuple with a list. So if you try and do this, you will get an error to say it can only concatenate tuples, not a list. So instead, what you can do is you can convert this to a tuple by just adding the word tuples and then run this code again. And you will see that now it successfully concatenates 1 and 2, 3 and 4 into a single tuple as expected here. But just remember, you cannot do it without this keyword. Otherwise, you will get an error. So if you try and do this list and a tuple, then this is not allowed unless you convert your list into a tuple. So just remember plus to concatenate two tuples and asterisk to multiply tuples, so you can repeat a pattern like this using tuple methods in Python. So here I have a tuple with the following items. It is just a list of colors. And what I want to do is I want to count how many times the color blue occurs. So we can see from these colors that blue is here and here, so twice. So by using colors dot count, you specify a value that you want to look up. So in this case, we want to look up blue. If I run this, you can see the output is 2. So tuples really only have two methods. One, which is the count method, and the other is the index method. Remember, these methods do not change the data. A tuple cannot be changed. So once it's created, a tuple cannot be changed. So what you get is you just get count in a new variable. The original tuple stays unchanged. Counts the exact matches. So here it's matching blue. But if I were to change it to capital blue, then what you'll find is that it finds that there are no mentions of blue, even though we can see that blue does exist. But since this is a capital letter, it won't work. So exact matches only. It returns an int. So when it doesn't find out anything, it returns a number. In this case, the number 0. So count tells us how many times a value appears. Missing values always return a 0. So if I change it back to blue, you can see that we do get the correct answer. And if I try and do yellow over here, you can see it cannot find yellow because yellow does not exist in our tuple. The next one is the index method. So with the index method, it returns a position. It is 0 index based and it finds the first match only. This is important. So we had 2 blues over here. And if I were to run this code over here, then it's only going to return the position of the first one. So if I run this, you can see at position 0, 1 is blue, and that's the output that we get. So even though blue appears twice, Python will stop at the first one. So hence we've only got the first position and not the position of the last one. The thing to watch out with the index method is missing values cause an error. Whereas, when we did a count of yellow, we get a value back, which is 0. But if you do an index of yellow, you will get an error. So if I do this, you see we get the index X is not in the tuple. So this is different from the count. Count basically returns 0 when it cannot find the yellow color, but index actually causes an error. So the value must exist in a tuple. Otherwise, you would have to do some error handling. What are Python dictionaries? So in this video, let's have a look at this dictionary. So this is a dictionary. It is defined by these curly braces. So for a dictionary, you use curly braces. Keys have to be unique. So these are keys. So name, age, city are the keys, and these are the values. And you access the values via the key. So the key over here is how you access the values. So if I run this over here, our dictionary is created. This is a key, this is a value, and this is a key, age, and 30 is the value. City as key and London as a value. So store data as key and value. Use curly braces as shown over here. You've got curly braces. Keys are unique. So these names over here must be unique. And you can access the data by key name. So in order to access the values, what you do is you type in the name of the dictionary, the variable name over here, and then in the square brackets, you put the item that you're looking for. So in this instance, we are looking for name, the key. So this is the syntax, dictionary name over here, and the key. This will read the data for you. Key must exist. So here, the key name must exist in your variable, and the output is the value only. So if I were to run this over here, you can see we get the name Alex as we input there, and the city as London. If I try and do print country, because country doesn't exist, we will get an error. So keys must exist. So if I run this, you will see that we get an error. There you go. You have key error. The country doesn't exist. You can change the value of a key by putting an equal sign in between and then the new value. So you assign new value using a key. Dictionary updates in place and no new dictionary is created. So here we are just simply changing Alex's age from 30 to 31. So if I run this over here, and you can now see when we print the dictionary again, his age has been changed to 31. You can add new key and value by just adding in the name of the new key and the value with the equal sign in between. This will create a new key value pair. So if I run this over here, you can now see Alex's job is engineer, whereas originally when we defined it, we didn't add the job, but now we have added a job. So you just add in new key, new data, same syntax as updating, and it will automatically create the missing key. Border is not important. So you need to be careful. For example, if you do a typo here, it will actually go ahead and create a new key. If I put age 1, for example, you can see that it has now added age 1 rather than update the existing value. You can remove an item by using the pop method. Pop removes one item at a time. A removed value is returned and the dictionary shrinks. So if we remove the city over here, and you can see that city no longer exists within our dictionary. We can store the value of the city in a variable. So here we can add a variable name to the left of the equal sign, and the pop method would give you back the value of the city, which you can then print, and then that value that we removed is London. Notice that you do not get the value of the key itself, you only get the actual value of the dictionary item. Looping through dictionary keys and values. So here I have a dictionary of a person. The variable name is called person, and the dictionary items are name, age, and city. So when we create this dictionary, we get key and value pairs. So age is the key, value is the integer number 30, city is the key, London is the name of the city. So here what we want to do is we've got for each loop. So for in item loop, essentially this is our dictionary person over here, and we want to get all the keys. So for each key, we want to print the key itself and then also access the item with the value of that key. So the syntax is for key in dictionary. You can access the value using key, and this is a common pattern in real programs. If I run this, you can see that we get the name Alex, age 30, city London. So we get the key name because we can access the key with this variable, and then we can get the value by putting in the key to search for in that person variable. So it's going to search for the key in that dictionary. You can call this whatever you want. So you can call it cake if you want. So you can call it cake and that would still work. So you don't have to call it key. But it's by convention that you call this key because that's what the for in loop gives you. The for loop gives you the key by default. You can also print the length of the dictionary. So the length counts the key value pairs. It doesn't count the characters, and it is useful for validation. So if we want to know how many items exist in this dictionary, if we do that, we can see there are 3. We've got the name 1, age here, that's item number 2, and key value pair 3 is the city is equal to London. So there are 3 items essentially in this dictionary. So length gives you that information. So just remember, by default, the for loop for each loop will give you the key, and from that key, you can then work out the value by using the original variable name. So this is very common in real world programs. How to access dictionary data in Python. So here we have a person dictionary. The person dictionary has 3 items, name, age, and city. You can access the name of a person by putting in the dictionary name and square brackets and then quotation mark over here, quotation mark at the end, and the name of the key. So in this instance, we want to access name and we want to see the value Alex. So if I run this, you can see you get the value Alex. So use the square brackets. The key that you're looking for goes inside the quotation marks. So here are the quotation marks, and it returns the stored value, which it did, which is Alex, which we got from here. There's an issue with this, which is if you put a key in that does not exist, so we don't have country in our dictionary, then this will cause an error. So if I run this, you can see we get a key error to say country is not found. So missing keys cause an error. The error type that you get is key error, as you can see over here, and the program stops. So your program will error and stop. And this is a common beginner mistake. When you're trying to look for something, it doesn't exist, you get key error. You can use a safer method, which is the get method from the dictionary. It has a similar syntax, but notice here is a method. So you use round brackets. You still put in the key name in quotation marks, and then when you do that, you do not get an error. Instead, you get a value of none. This value is of none type, so I've just revealed the type of this. So this is a special value in Python. So when you get this none type over here, no errors occur if the key is missing. Return is none by default, and this is safer for real world programs, so you do not end up crashing your program like this. But what you can do with the get method over here is you can pass it a default return value. So rather than just getting none, you can get something like a string, which is unknown. So if I run this, you can see the second parameter over here. We are looking for this key, and then if the key is not found, return none, and that's what we get unknown. So second argument is the default value that it would return if it cannot find anything, which in this case, it couldn't find country, so it returned unknown, which is the value that we supplied over here. So this prevents the none results, which is a special type in Python. And then, for example, you could just use your own string over here, which is of type string. So if I run this, you can see this is a string that's returned rather than the value none, which is a special type value in Python.